Hey, it's $1 Gaming here, and I'd like to talk about uh, memorizing a deck of cards and why I started doing that and roughly how to do it. At some point, I felt like I was studying IT and information technology stuff, and there were some things that I couldn't memorize that well, and I was recommended that using certain memory techniques could help me out a little bit. And uh, basically, I got a book about memory techniques, and I studied uh, how to memorize a deck of cards and some other things. Why? Well, that was one reason, that I could memorize all kinds of lists and stuff that I wasn't interested in. I couldn't really excel at memorizing things that I wasn't interested in. So I basically what you do is assign like a visual imagery to every card in the deck of playing cards. You know the playing cards, right? King of Diamonds, for example. And once you have assigned those visual images or imagery to every card in the deck, you can start creating kind of stories or little stories or in your head out of those images. So let's say you take this same King of Diamonds. I have my association with that card is either a glass window or just anything that's made of glass, basically. Then let's say I imagine a box that's made of glass, so that's a King of Diamonds. And let's say the next card is ten of clubs. No, clubs, spades. So you link that ten of spades to that King of Diamonds, and ten of spades could be like let's say ten of spades is starts with an S because it's a spade, ends with S, it's a spade. Okay, let's say it's something like an apple, just a random thing. So you let's say you put that apple on that glass box or inside it, whatever suits you better. And that's like two things connected, linked together. You memorize it, you go on, you take the third card, associate it, link it, and you do that with all the cards you have in the deck, 52 or whatever you have, and then you recall them. by recalling that story you created. So that's a very simple explanation to that. There are way more details on how to exactly do it and how to do it more effectively, and how to what kind of memory images you should create, and what kind of images you shouldn't create, because there are certain kind of properties, like our brain recognizes certain types of images better better than others. For example, everything that's like really violent and scary, to memorize those things way better. Or something that's big or massive. Let's say that you imagine like a flock of birds, like really big birds or small birds, doesn't matter. It's just imagine that the sky is full of birds, like a massive cloud of birds. Then that's way more. That's way better memory image for memorization than, for example, a single insignificant bird that doesn't stand out anything. It might be a single bird, but let's say it's just a little bit bigger than real life birds, then that would be a good thing. Or something that's very kind of utopic. Let's say that the bird talks or wears a hat or something like that. That's also a good memory image, because it's you remember or recall those crazy, absurd images way better. Anyway, that's how you can memorize a deck of cards. And why do I do it? Besides that it helps me memorize other stuff, like, or helps me study new subjects, or if I practice this technique a lot, like at least twice a day or so, like 3-4 times a week, then I'll notice that I recognize all kinds of patterns way better than without it. That's one thing. It improves focus, in my opinion, the ability to concentrate, because you had to really be able to focus on creating that story and linking it to connecting it together in a fairly fast pace. What else? Oh, one reason I practiced that memorizing deck of cards and was that I wanted to play poker, and that was years back, obviously. And I believe it helped me recognize these different patterns, flop texture, and let's say you play pot limit Omaha, you have four whole cards like this, 4 random cards, and what I did, I took either 2 cards at once. Looked at them and try to memorize them at once, not separately, but see them as a like one unit. So that way I wanted to improve my ability to recognize patterns better, faster. So when you practice that, next time you see two cars, you see them as a one like unit, and that makes recognizing those units that consist of two elements, two cars, it makes it faster. It should become like an automatic thing for your brain to do. Then I added third card and fourth card and tried to grasp this 4-card pattern in as fast as possible. And I believe that helped me a lot, like recognizing different patterns and making me understand all kinds of poker related stuff better. I've heard some people argue against that it's not important. You know, it is not absolutely necessary, obviously, to do that, but I believe if you do that, it will improve your capacity to effectively and faster recognize patterns. Okay, I've talked about patterns enough now. There are some other techniques I've been like practicing. One technique is where I have 100 numbers, and each number is assigned a memory image, just like with a deck of cards. And I just let these 100 numbers through my head. But instead of thinking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I just let that memory image associated through my mind. So I try to be as fast as possible and let all these images through my head as fast as possible. And the more you practice, obviously, the better, the faster you get, and that helps later when you want to memorize some lists or study something, a new language. You could apply that in learning new languages. You just have to make some adjustments maybe, but you can use it. So that's why I do stuff like that. One area in poker where you could use this method is to test your ability, your mental state, how fresh you are. Let's say you are about to play a poker session, but you're not quite sure how sharp you are, because you need to be sharp. You don't want to be drowsy or anything. So it's a simple test. If you know how to do it, how to memorize a deck of cards, you go through it, memorize, recall, and if you make too many mistakes, or if you feel like it's too difficult to memorize the cards. It takes too long. You kind of get stuck all the time, tired maybe, I don't know. And you make too many mistakes recalling, then maybe you shouldn't play poker then. Then maybe next day, or better shape, you make no mistakes, and that's a good indication that your mind is sharp. That's a pretty good way to test yourself, because you might think, like, subjectively assess yourself, just thinking that you're fine, but that's not enough. That doesn't always show your real kind of mind state properly. Oftentimes people, when they are tired, there is a certain like point in that tiredness where you feel like you're fresh and your mind is fresh, but you really aren't that fresh anymore. And it's easy to fool yourself thinking into that can do certain things while you really shouldn't do those things. So that's one area to apply it. Very, very nice way to test yourself. Another area, let's say you're playing what is this, like 7-card start or something like that, where there are community cards, and some cards of your opponents are showing at the beginning, I believe. I haven't really played it that much. Anyway, knowing which cards are already been kinda discarded gives you pretty decent advantage, because you can deduct and calculate some odds better that way. And if you're really good at memorizing a deck of cards, you're really fast, then that can certainly help playing that game. That's a little kind of, I don't know if it's a hobby, but interest that I have. That interest kind of came out of necessity and turned into a kind of interest, hobby, something. I thought I'll show how to memorize it, like in real time online, but it's kind of pointless, because you can do anything online. I can't really provide like a valid environment for that. I could just be cheating, right? So there is no point in doing that. I guess that's all I wanted to say about memorizing a deck of cards, and where can it be applied, and how useful it can be. I could say that much that first when I read about it that you can use this technique, then it said in the book that usually people don't believe that it's possible, and I kind of was skeptical too, but yeah, it's fairly easy to be honest. Technique is easy, but it's practicing it and doing it really fast requires actually some dedication and time, but yeah, it can be done. At some point I was practicing or training this with up to 3 decks of cards, but that was years back. I don't I don't really see any point in doing that now. I just don't need it. So that's something interesting that I thought that might might be interesting to some of you out there. Anyway, that's all. Uh, you can subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter, wherever it's easy to find me.